We're just gonna jump right into it and get our meeting started. I want to start off with the introductions. Actually, we'll start off with a roll call. Gariana, do you mind?
Yes. Beto Garibay.
Present.
Patrice Guillory.
Present.
Matthew Malone. And Shayla Bonner.
Present.
Board members are present. Quorum is established.
And then you want to do introductions for folks that are on Zoom, starting with Chris.
Good afternoon, folks. Chris James with the Barnes Institute.
Gariana.
Hello, Gariana Youngblood, Office of Reentry and Justice.
Jill.
Jill Ray with the Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson.
And Peter.
Hi, this is Peter and Kendra with the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, but we're going to keep our cameras off because we're in transit. Apologies.
No worries. Thank you, Peter. All right. Next, we want to open up for any announcements at this time.
Yeah, this is Matt. I will follow up on the announcement I made last time with regard to the court local rules. We are still in the period for suggestions to the local rules. That will end. I think the last time I was here, I hadn't done the announcement yet, but I did it within a day or two afterwards. And so we are through the July 8th is the last day for any interested parties to review and suggest changes to the local rules for this cycle. The local rules will be effective January 1st, 2025. This is how early we have to start that process. So July 8th is the deadline.
Thank you for that announcement. Are there any other announcements?
Well, I guess I can make one. The Office of Reentry and Justice is currently hiring for a program manager. So, if you know folks who you think would be great to join our team, certainly share that info with them. The deadline for that is actually also on July 8th.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. We can move to item number 2, which is public comment on any items under the jurisdiction of the Racial Justice Oversight Body and not on this agenda. I will open up for public comment at this time. I'm not seeing any hands on Zoom, none in the room. All right, so we'll move to item number 3, which is to approve the record of action for May 23rd. And it's attachment number 1. If we can get a motion and a second to approve the record of action.
I move that we approve.
Second.
Got a second from Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry, couldn't hear. Perfect. And then are there any public comments on the record of action before we move to vote? All right. Gariana, can you do a roll call vote? Thank you.
Yeah. Beto Garibay.
Yes, present.
Patrice Guillory.
Yes.
Shayla Bonner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, and then item number 4 is discuss presentations, topics related to each agency. And I know this is something that we were talking about last time, but we want to open it up for discussion.
Yeah, and I have to say, my apologies. I was hoping to maybe have some updates to you guys by now, but what we are planning to do, ORJ, is at least reach out to all of the county justice agencies to just sort of poll where folks are in terms of their data collection abilities and or challenges. And that maybe that's something that they could share with us that we can then share back with the body, so we can kind of just have a sense of um, what the respective needs might be and how we can maybe in the future potentially propose ways that we can better support those efforts, or find a way that we can kind of link a lot of that information across different departments. So that's the one thing that we're hoping to do, and maybe we can bring this back for the next meeting as well. The other option here too is maybe just to kind of pull from the members here what specific data or updated data or information you like to see, that we all can review, so that we can sort of resume those sort of conversations that we've had in the past. So I'm happy to kind of open the floor on that, specifically what some data items you'd like to see. We've already kind of covered quite a bit the Sheriff's Office quarterly report, but is there any additional presentations on anything having to do with data that's necessary to further any of the recommendations that impact certain departments? We can kind of talk through what that could look like.
I see, Jill.
I was just gonna suggest that, I don't know, Patrice or somebody might want to look at the new Health Services Atlas. It's an online portal to look at all sorts of different data points, to see if it has any relevant information to the work that you're doing.
Anyone else have any suggestions? Chris, go ahead.
So first of all, thanks, Jill, for that. I think, I mean, I am not familiar with that specific body of information, but it sounds like there could be some indicators, some strong indicators there, just of the level of community resources or resiliency, right? Like we know that, there are certain economic conditions or environmental and other factors that can contribute to these sorts of outcomes, right? In terms of entry into or re-entry into justice systems or systems involvement. And so I think whatever we get from justice system partners specifically, I think cross-referencing it with any of that information is going to be important, because there may be some unorthodox but effective ways to think about to think about the way that we do our work, things that we advocate for or push for, things that we'd like to see certain organizations do or roll out based on that information. And I think in addition to that, and in addition to what is on the sheriff's report, because there was a lot there, a lot more there than I'm used to seeing, and I appreciate that and think that can be helpful. But I think the number one thing that's probably missing from it for me right now is, so we can see like all of these bookings, and we can see them by the specific like jurisdictional department, but for what? Because if we don't know what exactly is going on, it's hard to create, or essentially impossible, right, to create some sort of intervention on the front or back end, or some sort of alternative to incarceration or something like that that speaks to or addresses some underlying issue that could make a difference in those outcomes. So we definitely need to know what are some of the, I mean, it's not like if a jurisdiction has, say, 500 bookings, in a quarter or something like that, we don't necessarily need to know, what all 500 of them are, but say the top 5 or something like that, something along that line. And it can be either broken down by the jurisdictions that can do that, or there could be, you know, just a larger sort of county-wide breakdown. But knowing that information is going to be helpful in terms of figuring out, you know, what we would want next steps to be, if there are any recommendations there, even in terms of thinking about things like community capacity funds and stuff like that, right? Like what sorts of organizations to prioritize based on what they offer, and how it could be responsive to what we see, or what the data is telling us is going on. So important to know sort of what are some of the most common offense types that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I wouldn't want to see a whole list of like every single booking, but if we can maybe pinpoint the top 5, or at least put them in groups. So just for example, if it's robbery or theft, like try to put everything in a bigger group instead of trying to sift through each booking to see like, okay, we got this amount for robbery, this amount for X, Y, and Z. But if we can identify a top 5, we can better understand what's happening. Any other suggestions, comments?
So my understanding is that the vendor Aries is who is extracting the data to provide for the quarterly report. And I think they asked for a couple different things. So I would have to try and find the point of contact with Aries to see if I can pitch certain things that we want and see if that data can be extracted.
Because I'm curious to know if they're able to. This report has the bookings information, not just, it's basically every LEA in the county, just about, right?
It should have.
Yeah, bookings by agency.
Yeah, it has booked
right?
by agency. I know they asked for an additional data point of arrestees, where do they reside? Where are they coming from? And so that was one that was asked for. And as I understand it, that's going to be worked on, if not already provided. So
Okay.
Aries, vendor Aries is the ones who have to reach out to see who's their point of contact in order to get that.
So is the request then maybe top the most common booking charges of all bookings within a certain time frame?
Yeah,
Start with?
that's at least a great place to start. You know, if we, based on that, if we need more information, I mean, we know this is iterative, and I know that the folks who have to work on this probably roll their eyes every time we talk about it, because it's like, I always want to know more information. I want to point out though, number one, that's just a natural part of the process. Number two, that it means that the data is good, right? Because it means we understand something and now we want to understand more about, you know, what's being shown. So, but yeah, as a long answer to your question, yes, I think that is a fine place to start.
So maybe within a calendar year, that most common charges of most common, I don't know the right term now. Most common, or the top 5.
Sure.
I don't even know.
Top 5 underlying charging offenses works. Yeah. And yeah, a year would be helpful, certainly, to start, or even if, you know, so I don't know if all of this would be coming from the quarterly report that we were just looking at. Because if it was, and so it made sense to do it on a quarterly basis as opposed to a yearly basis, I think that would also be fine. I certainly would take it, you know, from a year-long perspective, but I would understand if they were like, well, this is a quarterly report, so why don't we, you know, stick with that? And I think that would be, at least, again, it would still be helpful.
I guess I'm asking for the purpose of maybe not necessarily to be included in the actual quarterly report, but it's information that could be brought back to the data subcommittee.
Sure. Absolutely. Yep. Let's do a year then.
year.
Yeah,
Like
because all of
the
the,
percentage
all
of the
of this,
bookings on the most common charges.
I would say percentage and number. At least to just at least start with, but that, you know, the number of charges though does not necessarily, because one individual could have multiple charges, so that's just something for us to keep in mind. But at least we could just see what are the most common offenses folks are booked in on. Does that sound right to folks? Okay. Okay.
Cool. Any other comments, public comments? All right. So next is item number
Sheila,
5.
before you
Oh,
move
sure.
on to next, just curious to know if there's any, are folks interested in any other updated data to be shared with the subcommittee from other agents, even our, you know, our own? What would folks like to see from probation, from public defender, from DA? Again, just to kind of move the discussions along. And even though we kind of been put on pause because they're still trying to work out how best we can find a solution to that data collection and management on a more ongoing basis across different agencies. But until then, you know, what is some updated, at the very least, updated information that folks would like to see? You could certainly follow up with the district attorney's office from that letter that was sent to them a couple of years ago on certain data points to see, you know, where they're at and, or what, you know, what is the challenge for them. But are there other pieces of information that folks would like to see?
So I would say in addition to you know, what's already been named as far as, you know, the top 5 most common offense types for which there are bookings, and also you know, where the folks being booked live, you know, which was also noted and I think is also very important. I would say, especially from a DA's office, I think it would be important, and maybe public defenders would also have track of this some way. I think like program failures, like people being booked because, you know, they were in some sort of diversion program or other alternative and it didn't work out. Because, you know, it's helpful to know that and to try to dig deeper about you know, sort of what's going on there, or if there's a structural issue that can be addressed in a way that eliminates that problem. And also because part of the charge of the data subcommittee, and something that at least we can continue to work toward, right, is evaluating for efficacy the programs that we have. And so that's at least one way, even without the direct, say, programs or maybe the CBOs that run them, maybe having a robust data entry and collection process at this point. I don't know if some do or don't, but even without that, you know, we can at least track who's failing out of a program for whatever reason. And certainly if that's happening a lot for a specific program, then it tells us there's, you know, some more analysis that needs to be done about how that program works, or if there are issues with transportation to get there that are creating those issues, or things like that.
Are you saying specifically though of diversion programs or diversion options?
Say it again, Patrice.
Are you speaking specifically of I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the source of information that you're referencing. If
So-
it's just, if it's specifically of diversion programs or pathway, if you will, or diversionary decision that was made
Mhm.
that then led to an individual being engaged in some sort of programming, but then it for whatever reason, it shouldn't be rescinded, or trying to follow what you're.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure if it shows up in Contra Costa. I mean, I feel like I've maybe seen something along this line in the youth probation data that we had. Uh, seeing program failures like as a reason for bookings. And that generally means like you were placed into a program and for whatever reason that didn't work out, you didn't complete it, so on and so forth. So to the extent that that information is captured, say by a DA's office or, or even, if it's captured just in booking and wouldn't be too much of a pain, even though it wouldn't be a top 5 to add on, just having that information about, the program failures, how many people are getting booked for that purpose, and whatever information we can gather after that about which programs. I just think it goes a long way again toward that that charge or that recommendation from the RJTF for us to or for this body to evaluate programs for efficacy. And obviously that's something that, again, we will continue to develop the capacity to really do in a more robust way. But here is at least a way at the beginning that we can get some very basic sense of that.
I'm just curious by any chance if anyone know if the DA's office is still working with the Vera Institute for their data collection. So I know they did a project not too long ago where Vera Institute went in and did some data work and produced a report. And I was just curious if that still was that ongoing, or does anybody know?
I'm not sure
Okay.
where the status is on that. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I know the DA during budget hearings presented to the board. One of the asks was for some funds for her data system, because apparently the data system's cumbersome and pulling information out. But I'm pretty sure Vera's done, but we have not yet seen any report.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, I know it was, I want to say like over a year ago now.
It was a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was at the time that you all asked for data a couple of years ago, I believe.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I appreciate all of that. Because when you raised that, Shayla, I was about to ask you if you had a link because I definitely haven't seen it. I thought maybe it was just me. So I appreciate the discussion because I think we're all still kind of looking for it.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. All right. Patrice, was that a good
Yeah,
start?
and then I guess the last thing would be that at the last meeting, Shannon Ortland from Office of Ed did offer that there's some work that we could do with, or there's some information that they're likely able to share as well. So we can certainly follow up with her to kind of get the kind of perspective on things, is to include this group.
Okay. I'm on my iPad, so get back to the agenda. Okay, here you go. So the next item is to discuss and review data sharing agreements.
Yeah, so this one here, another faux pas on my part. There is a sample data sharing agreement. So in our last conversation, I think we sort of got to the place where we were talking about the mechanics of what type of data to share and how you have these sort of agreements across different agencies. There is a really great, it's down in Santa Barbara County. they've actually created like a criminal justice data strategy like work group where they then establish kind of this robust data sharing agreement across multiple agencies. And it gives the details of what that agreement entails. So I wanted to wait to get clearance on whether or not we could actually share that. And just hadn't yet got that finalized. But that's another piece that we could bring forward, just so we all can see an example of what a potential data sharing agreement could look like. And, you know, the stipulations that were basically negotiated between these different agencies so that that agreement was in place. You know, it really breaks down of what data is being shared, the security around it, who gets to utilize it for what purpose, things like that. So I think that would be good, you know, foundational learning for all of us as we think through how we kind of journey down this road of connecting the dots across the different agencies.
Thanks, Patrice. Any questions or comments regarding the data sharing? Seeing none. All right, so the next item is to discuss and review Sheriff's Office quarterly report, which is attachment number 2, pages 7 through 43. Okay, I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to review this ahead of time.
Well, and we'll be anticipating an upcoming one, right? Quarterly report.
July 23rd, I believe.
Yeah, so we'll have a new, and you know, that's always weird. If we've seen any new data points or updates or changes to.
I don't think any requests have been received to date.
I don't believe so.
Okay,
No one has been in any of the meetings where this has been discussed and asked for anything that I know of.
A request came from the board themselves.
yeah.
But I mean, that's not to say that this group couldn't, you know, request data, because the sheriff has been willing to add whatever data in that has been requested thus far.
Mm-hmm.
I would just reiterate that, you know, to that point, there's a lot more information here, than, you know, than what we started with, when we first started receiving these reports. So, that is much appreciated. I don't know how many of the the requests that we made, because there seems to be some distinction, or not that we made, but that we've discussed earlier today, could be repeated or are worth repeating, here on a quarterly basis. But I just want to, appreciate the fact that we do have a lot more information here, and the potential to make that information available. I'm sure that it is, available through county websites and stuff as is, but certainly as we get more insight from the sort of information that we've discussed previously, being able to make sure that we publicize it and make it as accessible as possible, in service of the development of changes, shifts, advocacy as necessary, to see some improved outcomes is going to be key. But I definitely want to, again, just appreciate the fact that there's been responsiveness to what has been requested, and just to the level of information and detail that was initially provided, and that is something worth noting and lauding.
Any other comments?
Can we ask a question, Shelley?
Yes.
So when it comes to the A3 requests and responses, well, at least with responses, the numbers are so low, at least for 2023. But I'm wondering, is it possible to get a demographic breakdown as to who's making those requests and what the responses are happening?
Sorry to jump in. Peter, have you seen the A3? They have a new data dashboard.
Oh, I have not. No, Jill. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll send you a link to that. That's new, and I don't know what all informations are. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I'll share it with you.
Thank you. Also wondering, and I'm still trying to remember everything from the report, but there was some helpful information in there about like assaults on officers, to kind of get a sense of what it is that officers are facing. I'm curious, do we also was there information in there, did I just miss it, about uses of force against, whether in jail or in the community when people are being arrested? Was that also included?
No.
Yeah, I'm guessing the sheriff probably won't have information around use of force at point of arrest in the community. That's probably I'm sure that's with the individual local police departments, unless sheriff will have it on their interactions in the community, like in unincorporated areas or wherever that they're providing policing. But I'm wondering if we can also have that kind of information within the jails. I'm curious.
I believe that information is in the quarterly report.
Oh, okay.
So it is under Custody Services Bureau. There's a page 16, there's assaults on staff. And if you proceed further, it changes over to Field Operations Bureau, page 24. That's assaults on staff. So field operations is all field work outside of detention.
Right. I thank you. I do remember seeing the assaults on staff, but what about use of force on inmates? Is that also in there? Apologies if I missed it.
No, there is not.
Oh, okay. Is that something that we're interested in looking at? Oh, you know what? I believe there was something around use of force incidents reported to the state DOJ, but I'm not sure if that's, and I think there was 0 from what I remember seeing. But again, I wonder if that level of detail, that kind of information would be helpful. I think that's probably something that community members would be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I know there's a report that goes out, one that I review routinely, and it has to do with just custody setting. So as an example, I have to review any video body cam reports or there's anything that's generated regarding use of force. I don't know if that report is being submitted to DOJ or not. My guess is that it is, but I'm not positive.
So,
Thanks.
so Peter, it does show here use of force incidents, and then there's the footnote describing what that is. So if there's something different that you're looking for, because this looks like it's, you know, gross bodily injury or serious bodily injury or death. If there's some different wording, just to get the wording accurate to know what to ask for.
Okay, yeah, you know, again, apologies, we're on the move, so we'll have to like really sit with the report so we know exactly what it is.
Where are you
asking.
seeing? So where are you saying?
So
Page
page
38?
32,
Oh,
if you look at the bottom, use of force incidents reported to state DOJ, and there's an asterisk, and below that, it describes what that is. It requires every law enforcement agency to furnish a monthly report to the Department of Justice for all instances when a peace officer is involved in any of the following, and it describes 4 different areas that would encompass. So that's why if there's something different or a different kind of interaction, it would be good to have the wording so that that could be requested. Because otherwise, if it's just use of force, it sounds like it's being answered in here.
Thank you, Jill. I'm sorry, we're trying to jot this down. You said page 38? 30,
32.
Agenda,
32,
with
32.
32 in the slide.
Oh, yeah, 38 of the slides, 32 of the agenda, sorry.
Thank you.
And Peter, you're wondering about the in custody, right? Not just out in the field.
Oh, I'd imagine that, you know, what we've heard is that people would like to know both. I'm just thinking what's the purview of the sheriff's office. You know, they have a lot more purview over what's happening in custody than, I mean, you know, I'm guessing they wouldn't have information for the rest of the police departments, but the way Jill just described it, if it's everything that's being reported, you said to the state DOJ, then that would be stuff that we can pull off the state site probably. Because all the departments would be funneling all of their numbers into that DOJ site.
Yes, this would just be for the sheriff. He wouldn't be pulling all the other LEAs. So this is just the sheriff, and it involves both in custody and out of, it's any involvement of an officer.
Got it.
That would be both in custody or in the field.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great that the sheriff is able to provide it to us. I'm wondering how we can also maybe start collecting some of that data at the local police department level as well. But yep, thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Any other comments, initial thoughts? Nothing else. We can move to item number 7, which is discuss and finalize our job data subcommittee priorities for joint our job and equity committee meetings. And that's attachment number 3, pages 44 through 54.
Yeah, so this is a question posed to all the subcommittees. As you all know, the plan is to have a joint equity committee meeting with the racial justice oversight body. And so in order to start to collect agenda items for that meeting, the question is being posed to each subcommittee about what specific agenda items would you like to see prioritized and discussed at that meeting, especially given the work and discussions that have been taking place within those respective subcommittees. So as a reference, we've included our job. How many work plans we have in here? Okay, just one. We have the our job work plan that was discussed at the, big our job meetings ago, where we highlighted some of the objectives or activities that we wanted to prioritize as a full body for this year. And then, you know, an overview, snapshot of the Racial Justice Task Force recommendations that the body is overseeing, right? So these are some elements we can look at to talk through what we would want to see added to the agenda for the joint meeting with the Equity Committee. And it might be worth it for us to consider what, how to best utilize that time and being very strategic about what we want to see move forward, that the Equity Committee can certainly endorse and move forward with the Board of Supervisors approval, things like that. So in the work plan itself, the primary data related objectives that I want to say we prioritized. Where is it? Oh, sorry, on here. I don't think we had one. I don't think we had a data related one that was prioritized, though data is going to play a role in some of these to some degree. Yeah, are there any items that folks would like to, oh, this one, even though it was highlighted in green, doesn't, well, the ongoing work. Objective 11, ensure collection and reporting of accurate data in all criminal justice and law enforcement agencies countywide. That was assigned to the data subcommittee. Well, obviously, this is work that is just, you know, still kind of pending. Really, any of these that have been highlighted to be prioritized are certainly items that can be discussed. So it's just a matter of what the data subcommittee will want to be added to the agenda.
Thanks, Patrice. I'm just looking them over real quick. But is there any suggestions, thoughts?
Especially as far as this subcommittee, not that it has to be limited, you know, but I know we will want to obviously focus within the purview of the subcommittee before maybe even looking at other objectives and saying, we'd like to see this too, which just means we can kick that to the you know, corresponding subcommittee and make sure that they're aware that something else has been named. To Patrice's point, I think 11 is the big one. And I think so there's a sub, I don't know what to call it. There's a subordinate item, number 2, the development of an MOU, right, that would be influenced on some level by the data use agreements, right, that you know, ORJ is working on, making sure it's okay for us to see in some form, you know, to make sure that we understand sort of what those agreements can look like, and that can inform sort of at least something that we might like to see in the county if we feel like we need that or need to create something similar in some way between you know, our job and or you know, anybody who's doing analysis, you know, or potentially has the capacity to do analysis, to receive data and do it. So I think those are things worth pointing out, but definitely 11 stands out as huge. I think additionally, maybe it's the, let's see, It's the objective 12 is also data related, but would be even more pending than 11 because we, and I kind of was alluding to that and similar sort of ideas around that before in terms of analysis of interventions, so on and so forth. But I mean, the interventions would have to be stood up and implemented first. So not a huge priority to focus on, but also stands out as one of the recommendations that would be specifically relevant to this group.
Thanks, Chris. Any other comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I guess I kind of echo your point, Chris. I definitely would like to see us prioritize objective 11. That's the one item that we can get some momentum going, considering I want to say probably most agencies are, I'd say the county justice agencies. I can't speak for the municipal law enforcement agencies, but certainly the county justice agencies are all looking at this in some capacity in terms of having the technology and the staff and the people who can do the analysis and things like that to just get a better sense of their own operations and impact on the public and the people that they're coming in contact with. So I certainly think that this will also be something that the respective agencies would be supportive of and working toward. We just got to get the mechanics and stuff down.
Yep, and sorry to go back and forth, but real quick, I'll also add the activity 6 under objective 11 also in terms of just the training, like a countywide training for all agencies about sort of what the data requests are, or in terms of data and using data for racial equity and such, sort of why we're asking for certain things, or what are the best practices for how to get that information, how to collect it, how to categorize it, and trying to create some standard practices around that as well, is also going to be important. Some of that is certainly there's a lot of capacity to your point, Patrice. There's a lot of capacity that just has to be built, systems that have to be developed, staffing that has to be figured out, and resource. But there's also just in terms of how we ask certain questions, how we note certain information, how we collect it, that are more sort of procedural things that also impact the quality of the information we get, and making sure that everybody across the board, whether you're probation or law enforcement, or even a program or whatever the case may be, that you're sort of getting that information in the same way and using the same sort of practices and procedures to get it, so that it's consistent, and we have an accurate picture of what's going on.
Hi, this is Peter. I'm curious, do we already have some kind of like an analysis or some kind of collection of where the gaps and where the opportunities are? Like, do we know across the departments what their needs are when it comes to data collection? Like simple analysis of which departments actually have a data person that can do this work and which departments still need one. Do we already have certain processes in the past that have been set up that have worked, so we don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel, but are good examples of how folks have shared data? Like, do we have that kind of analysis, and is that already produced in some kind of summary report somewhere?
No, we don't. We don't. So, I kind of spoke to it a little bit earlier about ORJ. We're willing to at least ask questions of the different agencies to see what their data needs are as sort of like a polling or a follow-up that we can maybe share back. Certainly nothing very sophisticated, but the very least just to get word back on where everyone is at. But I think certainly having a greater, deeper dive on that really be helpful. And a helpful conversation to have with the equity committee, because all of these data related tasks in this work plan are going to be resource intensive in some kind of way. And so, which means it's going to have budgetary implications. So it'd be good to have that in alignment with whatever conversation we have with the equity committee about what we'd like to see come forward.
I think that's a great point. And I think, yeah, I think that would be great if that's something maybe we can address with the equity committee. But having that analysis, having that information would be great. So I'm not quite sure how we would move forward with getting a sense of where, I mean, so you're saying, Patrice, that ORJ could potentially lead with like, exactly, what do you think, a survey or something that you share with each of the organizations? And
It would be just direct questions via email to each agency to see if they can respond in writing with where they are. I'm certainly open to receiving any feedback on how we should frame those, which specific questions we want to ask, so we can get the right kind of detail from every agency. We could ask them all the same questions and ask that they respond in writing.
is that something we want at this data subcommittee to kind of do together? Like send out a draft to everyone here and then maybe via email
Sure.
for time in and just, yeah.
Yeah, that'll work for me.
I love that idea.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Chris and Patrice, for your feedback on that. Yeah, I was actually looking through all of the objectives myself, and a number 11 does really stand out. I think that was one of the ones we were like, that's one of our bigger lists. So I'm in agreement with that. I don't want to leave anything unsaid, so I will open it up for one more time for any. Yes.
This is Matt. Just a follow-up question kind of on that whole discussion. Is the idea when we send this out that the committee will kind of set forth the idea, how do I phrase this? Sort of the global set of what it is interested on behalf of the RJOB gathering from these agencies, and then assess where they are in relation to specific data points, or is it something different?
No, I think it's more or less. Rephrase that question.
So I guess, yeah, I'll try to simplify it because I lost it halfway in the middle there. But I'm wondering if, so as I understand it, the goal and the objective 11, right, is we would like to, the end goal of it is to have some sort of consistent data practice, whether, and kind of across the board in terms of what data points are collected, and in particular to, I think Chris mentioned item 6, how we improve accuracy on specific points.
Mhm.
So I guess what I'm getting at is when we send out something to different agencies, are we asking them what they're doing now? Or are we saying this is what we need, and what do you need to get to that point?
Well.
And the reason I'm asking,
Yeah, no, that's a
okay.
good question, because that would help RJ to refine what questions we want to ask them in order to understand what the actual need is. So my thought, generally speaking, is just of asking, what are your current data collection capabilities, and are you able to disaggregate certain information by race? Not necessarily thinking of going into the weeds of how are you defining race, or how are you defining certain race or ethnic groups. I think we can get to that point at a later time, but it's more or less around, are you able to collect information? Are you able to pull that information, analyze those kind of things. And if not, what are the barriers to that? They may say it's staffing. We don't have a data system. We're doing everything through Excel spreadsheets and watching YouTube videos to figure out how to do formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Run the gamut. And so that's what I'm thinking, but I'm open to hear if that's not the right course of action, and then what's the better questions to ask.
Hi, Patrice. Sorry, can I just jump in? Because Kendra and I are going to log off in a sec. But can I just chime in? I'm under the same kind of impression, or I'm at the same place where you at. I'm thinking there's kind of two sets of questions we want to ask. One is around process and capacity, and then the other one is around like substance and content. I wasn't thinking about substance and content yet. I know there's a lot of talk there, but I was just thinking bare bones, nuts and bolts. Where are folks at in just capacity to even do data analysis, collection, sharing, because I think that's a good place to start. So then we can figure out, like, okay, if we can recognize and identify the gaps where departments are struggling because they don't have staffing or a more modern, up-to-date database, or there's certain data sharing protocols that haven't been established, maybe we start there just so we can kind of get that set up. So then when we do start to look deeper as to the specific kinds of data we're looking for and the substance of it, then we'll at least have our systems set up so we can start to facilitate that. But so I'm just kind of echoing what you're saying, Patrice. I was at the same place of understanding.
No, that's super helpful to me too, because what it is first understand capabilities.
Yeah.
And sort of build from there the plan of action to kind of to move people towards ability to get the data that we would be looking for.
Yeah.
And identifying the roadblocks.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of, I guess my question was a step ahead of that, was presuming that there were resources or whatever else that there might be that you know, that they might not, in fact, not have. What data would we want to have?
Yeah.
I think that's right. That's the next question after what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even these activities in this work plan kind of assumes to some degree that a lot of the agencies do have things in place, and that wasn't always I mean, probation, we just got a case management system off the ground, you know, so we just came into the 21st century. Hello.
We're only 2 years in one of the courts, so. Yeah.
So, you know, and even then that still takes, we're still working out the kinks. It still takes time. We just, I think, hired a new staff person to really kind of managing a lot of those pieces. So, I mean, obviously we have the ORJ within probation. So we have analysts, but that's not the case for every other agency, right? So we just kind of want to know where folks are at. And then in order to get us to these items, I think. Yeah. And St. Shares, you guys just put, what is it for the Measure X resources to hire on some data folks too. So, you know, everybody's kind of in the same boat, just getting to the place of building up the capacity.
So Patrice, when you're having these conversations, are you gonna also ask if there is a plan in place, if they're going to build capacity in that way, or is it just to say like, hey, you know, we just want to see where you're at now, and then kind of go from there? Because it may be, you know,
I can ask that question.
Yeah,
I can ask that question.
It would be helpful to know, like, if there is some, you know, some plan in place down the road, like say, hey, we're bringing in somebody to take on this work. That way we kind of know like what's to come. It might be helpful to know.
What I could do is maybe draft some sample questions and then offline send it to, oh wait, I can't do that. I'm in a member seat. This is hard. Like the member seat being so maybe we'll figure out a way to get questions to everybody so we can get feedback where we don't run into any issues. And then maybe from there, do that before we send it out to the departments. That'd be helpful.
I think that's great.
Okay.
And I know some folks have to hop off early, and I think we're done. Sorry, I'm on my iPad, but I'm using my phone to look at my agenda. So if you see me looking down, I'm not ignoring anybody, and I'm not engaged. It's just everything is on my phone right now. Sorry, y'all. Okay.
But I think if I could help you out, Shayla, the next item is really next step. So we actually can end
Okay.
it pretty early if you like. And so from what I'm hearing, for sure, we'll try to get a sample data sharing agreement to you all to review. And then also start working toward polling all the agencies in terms of their data capacity and current process, if any, that they have in place. But before sending out any questions, we maybe I don't know the timeline wise, should we just bring it back to the full committee to review to the next committee meeting
In July.
In July?
We could, if we have quorum.
No, that was my kind of caution there. We can at least prep for the July meeting with those questions, along with the data subcommittee, or we say a data sharing agreement.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Are there any other next steps that folks heard?
I think was it Beto was saying that he's gonna reach out to Aries, the vendor, for the additional data points that we talked about, even outside of the scope of the quarterly report from the sheriff. So when we talked about the sort of top 5 offenses within the county for the year, even as opposed to the quarter, things like that.
Maybe we can, Jill mentioned the health services atlas.
Right.
I'm sure it's public, so we could probably find it and pull it up, but we can agendize it too if folks wanna.
I put both links.
Exactly.
I put both links in the Q&A, so maybe Garyana can grab them. Both the A3 and the Atlas.
If there's nothing else, we will end our meeting here, and the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 25th from 3 to 5.
Right. Thanks, everybody.